Hi, this is Dr. Kimberley Linert, author of Visualizing Happiness in Every Area of Your Life and host of this podcast, Incredible Life Creator. And today I have with me Judy Kane. Hey, Judy.
Hi.
I'm so excited to have you on, and we're going to get on to some really important things. And I'm not going to give away the secrets, but just so people know who you are, I'm going to read your short bio.
Okay.
So, Judy Kane, author of Your Four Truths How Beliefs Impact Your Life, is dedicated to helping individuals get past barriers that are keeping them stuck or causing them discomfort. She helps people change the limiting subconscious beliefs that are holding them back. Through speaking engagements, workshops, and individual client work, Judy empowers others to achieve their goals. Her background was mostly IT and management, but she spent 5 years as a realtor before founding her current business. All right. So I know you didn't start there, you started somewhere else. So tell us about you.
Right. So I did spend most of my working life in IT one way or another. I started hands-on and then, went into management and did that for quite a while. And it was good. I enjoyed it. But then that ended, right? And so I went into real estate because my then husband and I had agreed that I would get my license when I stopped with IT
Mm.
to help out with his business that he had. He was a realtor. And while I was doing that, it was not my niche. It was helpful to him because I could do the project management and I could do the desktop software and do the things that weren't his bailiwick, right? But once I learned how to do it, there wasn't just wasn't a good fit for me. But at the same time, I got exposed to what I do now, and that was what really got me excited. It's helping people change the beliefs. I had no idea what the impact of subconscious beliefs were until I started learning how to do this and saw how much it helped people. So as I was doing the realtor work, I was taking these workshops and learning how to do that. And I didn't think it was going to be a business. I was taking them more for me than anything else, because I had seen this process work with that husband. Right? He had a pain. Um, a friend said, "Can I help?" I watched, and that was the first time I had seen this process, and I was stunned that it took 5 minutes and the pain was gone. It didn't come back, and apparently it was related to a subconscious belief that he had. So I was hooked, right? I mean, it was like, and it was something I could learn how to do. So, some other alternative things were a little bit more mysterious, but this was a process that I could see that I could do. I felt confident I could learn how to do this. And so I started taking the classes just for me and people I knew, but 3 years later in 2014, it was like it was too good. I had to share it with more people, so I started the business.
Awesome. So, in the beginning, what made you decide to go into IT? Of all the things you could have chose, why did you choose that?
My brain is a very logical brain, and computers are pretty much nothing but logic, right? So it was a good match. I like solving puzzles. Um, Creating code to tell the machine what to do. It's just a series of steps in logic, basically. So it was just a natural fit. My degree was in statistics, so I've always been more on the numbers and logic side of things than some other areas. But when I got exposed to programming in college, and so it ended up that's where I got a series of jobs. That was where I kept showing up with the interest and skills. So that's where I went. Yeah.
So cool. It's funny, when I was in college, I had a statistics class and I loved it. but I remember having classmates that were especially specifically in the psychology
Mhm.
um majors, and they would complain loudly about, oh, that statistics class, it is so hard, and they all complained about how so hard it was. But to me it made actually sense, and I especially like the graphing and seeing how you could manipulate things to make them look different than they really are. Even that's pretty interesting.
It is. You know, the only book I got assigned in statistics the whole time I was taking it was a book called How to Lie with Statistics. And it was not advocating it, but it was showing how important it is to make sure that the studies are unbiased. And you know, it was pointing out how you could do it wrong.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you're really brilliant if you were a statistics major. I have to say that. So, but then you did the real estate, but it wasn't really your thing. And then just really happenstance, you learned about this new technique. So,
Yeah.
how does someone with a logical brain go into this other piece, which is kind of like, is it NLP or something similar? Similar,
Yeah.
which is a little woo woo for some people. How did you go from that to that and see it, and what did your logical mind, how did it embrace that?
Well, actually, I would not have planned it this way. You know, I certainly wouldn't you know, when I graduated from college, say I'm going to end up changing people's subconscious beliefs. And so I'm going into IT first. That wouldn't have been my logical way of getting here. But when you look backwards, it all connects, right? What I do is as I talk to people about what about their system is not giving them the results they want, and then we change whatever parts are needed to give them the results that they want, which is exactly what you do in IT. It's
Yeah, it really
yeah,
is, isn't it?
yeah, it really is.
It's like, I'm not liking this result. Where is the blind spot? Where is the sticking point?
Mhm,
And you just go find that sticking point.
and change it.
Yeah.
So it's really not that different. And the realty stuff came in very handy because it helped me understand what you need to do to be an entrepreneur, to run your own business.
Mhm,
Because when I was in corporate, I certainly did not need to go and find business. It
mhm.
came and found us, right? So you know, it was really good to see what was necessary to be an entrepreneur and learn about all the aspects of that. So it was helpful. It just wasn't where I wanted to stay.
Yeah. So, you first started just learning on your own to, enhance your own life, work with some friends. But when did it start to go from I'm working with friends and now there's people coming to me?
Yeah, well, I took the first workshop to learn this process in 2011. And I took all the ones that were available. They have a variety of ones, and I took them all. Just I couldn't get enough, right? I was hooked totally on the possibilities for this. And so I'd taken everything at least once and some of them twice by the end of 2012. And it was in the middle of 2014 that it was just, yeah, I just felt compelled to share it with more people. And, you know, and friends of mine who knew me were like, they weren't really sure what had happened because this was sounded very different from what they had previously known me to be doing. And so it was you know, I wanted to use it with more people. I really it gives me great joy when I help people get past whatever the barriers are that they have. And I also knew I was moving to Florida. And as it turned out, it's a lot easier to introduce this to people that have never known you than to try to tell people who've known you in other ways about it, right? It was a big switch to most people's mind. It's not as big of a eye roller now as it was in 2014.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, I mean, yeah, where it sounded kind of woo-woo then, now there's so many people that have heard about the impact of mindset and
Mhm.
have a little bit more information about subconscious beliefs, that it just doesn't sound as weird as it did, 11 years ago. But yeah,
Well, yeah, and people who know and love you, they want you to be the way you've always been. People don't even if it's positive change, people don't handle change well, and they're like, "No, she's changing. What if she doesn't love me anymore?" You know what I mean?
that's so true. Really, it made them uncomfortable.
Exactly. And so
Yeah.
then you moved to Florida. So a lot of people, they're just starting their business just like you. They're either a coach or they're, starting some small at the beginning, small business. And like, where do you start? So how did you start finding your clients?
That was fascinating, really. I found a place to practice, where I had like a brick and mortar place where I could invite people in. And the next step was to start meeting people because I knew nobody down there. I had a daughter and her family lived down there, which was the reason for the move. Um, and I came back 9 years later last year because Florida was not my place. But when I got down there, I really didn't know anybody. So I researched networking groups. And some of them were good fits and some weren't. You go, and if you tell people you help people change subconscious beliefs and they start looking frantically for somebody else to talk with, those aren't your people, right? But I was lucky. I found like I guess 3 or 4 networking groups that felt like good fits, right? I met people and I enjoyed the networking. Um, I started setting up all the stuff you need for the business. I stopped taking the advice of everybody that was, you need to be posting 3 times a day on 5 different platforms and have a website and a newsletter and a blog. And, it wouldn't have fit. And it didn't feel good listening to all these things that I needed
Who
to
has
be
time
doing.
for how do you have time? I always wonder, how do you have time to work when you're doing all this other stuff that's not work? I mean,
It's
it's
not,
not your like life's work.
absolutely. So, I stopped listening to them and started listening to me, right? And it was like, well, I can do one of these things now, and then I'll add one more as I need to. But my business has always been based on interacting, the networking, forming the relationships, getting referrals that way, getting, relationships with coaches who send people to, it's the interpersonal connections with people is how I built the business. But I am out there, I have the normal stuff that's out there for a business. Yeah.
I was gonna say, if you're out networking in a group, what, how do I ask it? What was your elevator pitch? How did you explain this in a way that people know what you're talking about and they didn't want to walk away?
Well, it took a while for me to find the right thing that people understood quickly, because a lot of the groups I'm in, you got 30 seconds to explain what you do.
Mhm.
And so, how I lead in now is I help people take out their head trash.
When we first met, you told me that, and I thought that was just awesome.
Yeah, yeah,
Who doesn't understand that? Take out your head trash.
yep. I could even fit that one in 15 seconds, right? I mean, it kind of says it all. So, yeah, so that's how I explain it, and people get it. It doesn't sound mysterious. It doesn't, they get it.
Yeah. So I'm sure people listening are thinking, how does she take out the trash?
Right? So that's the fun part. Well, there are 2 fun parts because half of what I do with my business is talk to audiences so that they understand what subconscious beliefs are. The other half is helping individuals change those beliefs. So, yeah, so, when I talk to the individuals and help them do this, we figure out what's going on, what would they rather be experiencing, and then we zero in on the beliefs, which have probably been there since, before they were 7. Um, and a lot of times the subconscious beliefs and your conscious beliefs don't agree with each other. So it's not obvious to some people what might be holding them back. And so we start exploring, and then the change process itself is pretty quick. I could, it can usually take less than 5 minutes to change any one belief. So it's finding the beliefs that are causing the most issues that, the change part's pretty straightforward.
So, just for people who aren't aware or educated on this, talk about what do you mean when you're talking about the subconscious mind?
Yes, absolutely. So when we come in this world, we're little sponges. We are just for the first until you're about 7, you're just trying to absorb what the rules of engagement are wherever you landed. Right. So you get most of it from your immediate family, but wherever there are other impacts, you could be learning a rule about something. Right. And those beliefs create your reality, right? They form your perception. It's the lens through which you look at everything that happens around you. And so, it's how you interpret events and other people. It's your opinion of yourself. It's 95% of why you do things, even though they are not obvious to you necessarily. And so they're very important and can be very surprising to people if they're trying to do something and they're doing all the right things and they get really frustrated because it's not making any difference. There are probably some subconscious beliefs in there that are creating that resistance to whatever it is they're trying to do. So yeah, that's what they are and why they matter.
I mean, that makes sense to me. If I think anyone who's ever attempted being on a strict diet can understand that.
Yes,
You're consciously saying, "Yes, I want to be healthy. I want to be healthy. I want to be healthy." You're even doing your affirmations. I want to be healthy. And consciously you're telling yourself this. And your
yes,
subconscious mind is going, "I want the apple fritter. I want the apple fritter."
right. That, or somebody, if they've been in a unhappy relationship, say, "Well, I'm never going to do that again," and 6 months later it's a different person, but the relationship looks very similar.
Mhm.
It's like, how did I get here again? Right? It's not what they were consciously choosing, and yet it happens. Um, Success can be very elusive if you've got conflicting money beliefs from childhood, because your subconscious will be protecting you from the ill results, the ill effects of having more money. So there are things in there that can be very insidious, and really create a lot of misery for people.
Mhm. Yeah, and talk about these rules. So we have an experience, usually when we're young, and then there's a rule. But the
Yeah.
rule doesn't always work all the time. In fact, a lot of times it doesn't work.
Yeah, right. They probably served well in some capacity as a child, but they're not helping you with your conscious goals and the things you want to achieve in your life. So, um, yeah, the rules are pretty clear. There are things that tell you what's safe and what isn't, or what your value is as a person, how you need to behave with other people to be accepted and treated well, or at least not you know thrown out of the tribe. Right. Basically is what it is. I mean, that's why it's so adaptable. I think it's really good, because if we all came in with the same rules, but where you landed didn't have that, I mean, you wouldn't be there long, right? So
So since these subconscious thoughts, rules, blocks are kind of hidden, how do you find them? Get
so
rid of them.
Yeah, right, yeah. We use in the process I use, which is called Psych K, we use muscle testing to see what's in the subconscious. Now, for those who don't know what muscle testing is, it's a process that, some nutritionists use to figure out what the body wants for a supplement. Some chiropractors use it to figure out where to adjust a part of your body, and in Psych K, we use it to see what is in the subconscious because people don't know. It's not, you can't just ask them to answer a question and figure it out that way.
Because
Uh,
then you're in the conscious mind again, right?
exactly,
And
exactly.
and the
Yeah,
conscious mind is not the same as the subconscious mind.
not at all.
And you would hope they're working together, but
Well,
they're
that's the
not
goal,
always
right?
working.
And when they are, that's kind of when you're in a flow state, right? Everything is
Uh-huh.
kind of going in the right direction. It's when you've got this resistance that's going on, the barriers, the blocks, the discomfort, that's an indication that there's a subconscious belief there that isn't wanting you to go that way.
So does the actual magic happen just being aware of what exactly that block is? Or is there something else that happens that helps actually remove that block?
Yeah. The process is the actual changing of it. And to me, it's like, writing computer code, right? It's like, all right, here's the line of code that's not working for you, and we're going to replace it with the thing that's going to make it do what you want, right? And that's the part that's fast. That's the part where it's usually less than 5 minutes to change any one belief. And it's not painful. People come in, they're usually pretty comfortable with the process. They
Mhm.
don't need to go back if you don't need to know the reason for these beliefs. So in the cases where people have had the trauma that is related to it, they don't need to go back and re-traumatize themselves by remembering it or explaining it or doing any of those things. It's just, well, this is what it is and this is what you want it to be. And the process itself it's not, you know, it involves a series of postures that help you get into a right brain, left brain balance where it makes it easier to make that change. And so it's really pretty straightforward.
Got it. So when you're removing these, you're making the change. Um, well, if you're gardening and you're pulling weeds, and then you think, "Oh, my garden's weed free." And then a week later, there's these little green things that are coming out of the ground and they're not your flowers.
Yes.
Does that happen with this, or like once it's cleared, it's cleared?
That's a great question. And the answer is it depends. Uh, when I've worked with people with phobias, those are very simple sourced. They're not a whole lot of beliefs that are causing the phobia. It might be an extreme reaction, but it's not very complicated of what's causing it. Um, that's the only thing people say, well, how many sessions do I need? The only time I feel comfortable talking about and answering that question is if it's a phobia. I've not had a phobia client take a full session before. Everything else is kind of like, I don't know how many beliefs are there, right? And for the phobia ones, I have not had people come back and say, well, it's back. I can't, all of a sudden, I can't get back on the plane, or all of a sudden, the snake jumped in front of me and I lost it. I mean, that I've not had people come back and tell me that. With other things, sometimes it's you get through one layer and then you find that there are deeper layers of something.
Mhm.
And so that can definitely happen. Or you could have changed it for one type of a situation. And while it looks like it's the same belief, it can be in a different context. And so sometimes things can come back like that.
Got it. Now, I remember when we talked earlier, you were saying that you actually work with a lot of coaches.
Do, yes. Because I don't do coaching. I don't do behaviors, strategy, tools, accountability. which is why I frequently serve as a resource to coaches, because they have clients that can get stuck in the coaching programs. And that's frustrating to the coach. It's frustrating to the client. And so they'll send them to me for a session to, see if we can't get rid of the block that's keeping them from being able to move forward in the coaching program.
Yeah. And actually, sometimes with any problem, just a second set of eyes even makes a big difference because when you're even in a coaching situation and you know each other, there's that some personal, I don't know, familiarity that
Mhm.
sometimes even the coach might not see some of those blocks that someone from a third party could actually notice right away.
That's very true. And if that's not what you're looking for, like, I'm pretty good at hearing limiting beliefs when people start talking. When I first learned this, my challenge was not to point them out unsolicited. You know, we'd just be having a normal conversation with people and go, well, there's a limiting belief. And there's people did not want to hear that, right? I feel comfortable doing that when somebody comes to me for that, but I have learned not to do that in general conversations now. But it is because this is what I do. I've built some skill in hearing some of those areas of resistance that don't even they come out and people aren't even aware that's what they're saying.
Mhm. So if someone wanted to do their best to kind of monitor themselves,
Mhm.
like be aware of like when they might be speaking or thinking something like that. Is
Mhm.
there certain words or phrases that
Mm.
people typically say to themselves that like it's almost always like a limiting belief?
Yeah, actually, that's a great question. Well, first of all, just listen to yourself talk, right? If it's mostly not helpful and if you're mostly critical and not cheerleading, well, there's a clue right there that you've got some beliefs about yourself that are not not good with self-esteem, right? It's like pay attention to that. But a lot of times if people say, well, I've never been any good at this, or this is just the way it is in my family, we're all like this. If you start doing that, you might be able to challenge yourself about, well, really, is that true? Yeah, taking a good look when you hear what you're saying to yourself about yourself, um, and not being enough, whatever, fill in the blank, good enough, smart enough. I'm such a klutz. I'm always dropping things or falling down. Well, it's not true. You might trip on something once every 2 weeks. Think of all the other steps you take where you didn't. So,
Mhm.
um, you're focused on the flaw there. Yeah.
Exactly. And then the word that stuck out to me that when you were talking just a minute ago is always. How often is anything always? Soon as we say always,
Yes.
we got to be lying to ourselves. Is anything ever always?
Never.
You know?
Of course, nothing is ever never either, right? Yeah, always and never are really good words to be looking at. And what I tell people when I speak to audiences and stuff is look for the patterns, right? And that's the biggest way. If you have a pattern of freaking out when you think about doing this thing, or always like like feeling icky when you think about having to do something, or a pattern of any kind of a pattern in relationships or in business, or in an emotional pattern that always comes up in certain circumstances. That's the big clue that you've got subconscious beliefs there that are getting in your way. Self-sabotage, that's classic.
Mhm. So, how would someone know that they need to come see you, like they need some help with something?
Well, first of all, they should have something they really want to change. I mean, if you don't really want to change something, it won't work. You got to really want something to be different, is the first thing. What I tell people when they ask what they can do at home is, and so I would try these first, and if they don't work, then go look for somebody who can help with it, right? Is figure out what you really want. People don't. always know what that is. They know what they might know what they want to avoid,
Mm.
but they haven't given a lot of thought to what they really want. They're just trying to not have something happen that is painful to them in one way
Yes.
or another, right? So figure out what you really want first, and then figure out what that really looks like in some detail. Think of examples of what your life would be like when that's true, and go into the it looks like this, it sounds like this, it feels like this, and kind of immerse yourself in the experience of examples of that being real. Sometimes that is enough to change subconscious beliefs. But if not, at least you know where you're going, and you can, kind of figure out what you need to do next to get there.
Yeah, yeah, great advice. And if they're still stuck, that's when they come see you.
Yeah, yes, or friend, and there's so many people who do different ways of changing beliefs. I've got my way, well, it's not mine, but I've got a way that I use. There are lots of modalities. Find somebody who does something that sounds like it would work with you. Find the person who does that you feel comfortable with. And certainly come to me too. I mean, that's great. I would love that, but don't feel constrained. There's not just one path there for getting through this.
Yeah, and that's good to know because we're all so unique.
Mm,
We're all
absolutely.
so unique.
Yeah.
Yeah. Wow. Well, if people did want to work with you,
Uh-huh. Yeah.
where do they find you?
My business is called Aligned Consciousness, and so, oddly, that's the name of my website.
Mhm.
It's alignedconsciousness.com, and they can go there. There's a way to book a 15-minute free call if they have questions, and just wanna know more about what I do, or would it work with what they want, or, just it's a good way. If you
Mhm.
poke around, you might find answers there on the website, but you can always book a free call, and we can talk about it.
That's a great idea. Well, now I have a personal question for you.
Sure.
What gives you the most happiness and fulfillment in your life at this point?
Relationships are big to me. Relationship with family and friends and pets. I've almost always got a pet of some sort around. Um, and working with the people. When I'm working with clients, it's one of the most consistent places where I'm in the present. I get a lot of joy from it. I feel like I am working in purpose, on purpose, however you want to say it. It feels very aligned with what I think I should be doing. And so that gives me joy too.
Yeah, yeah. Really, really and truly. And I've noticed when I'm working with people on something, there's something about it that both of you actually benefit. It's like you're taking the journey with them. And
Yes.
I love that about helping.
It definitely is, it gives you a higher vibration when you're doing this, it's feels good, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, it does. So, well, thank you so much for being on the podcast and for, answering these questions about subconscious and removing the head trash. I just
Right.
love that, removing the head trash. So, anyone, if you need your head trash removed, you go see Judy.
Yes, absolutely. And I've really enjoyed this conversation. Thanks for the opportunity. Yeah.
Yeah. So, I have one last question.
Okay.
What is your best advice on living an incredible, amazing life?
Decide what you want and pay attention to what resonates. I think those are, if you don't know, it's hard to get there. And looking for the resonance, I think, is really important.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Judy. We'll talk to you again soon.
Okay, wonderful.